2021 is indeed a good year for superbikes because as we collectively emerge from the pandemic, we've got a new Aprilia RSV4 and RSV4 Factory on our hands. In keeping with tradition, the $18,999 Aprilia RSV4 and the $25,499 RSV4 Factory, complete with semi-active Ohlins suspension and forged aluminum wheels, is an evolution of the original 2009 RSV4. That was the first motorcycle to take 250cc Grand Prix thinking and apply it to production chassis design to create one of the most nimble, agile and devastatingly quick superbikes of the modern era. Aside from a capacity increase from 1078 to 1099cc, the new motor gets a lighter crankshaft to deliver more momentum to the tyre faster, with Aprilia claiming a rocking 217 horsepower at 13,000 RPM and 92 pounds-feet of torque at 10,500 RPM. The V4 party happening below your nether regions is kept in check by a revised chassis, aerodynamics and electronics package that pulls the magic trick of making the RSV4 and RSV4 Factory both easier to ride and faster than its predecessor. Never before used on a production Aprilia, the new underslung swing arm is modelled on the same unit used on the RSGP MotoGP machine of Aleix Espargaro, and it's an impressive 30% stiffer than the conventional unit used in 2020, with Aprilia claiming the RSV4 weighs 445 pounds ready to ride with a full 4.7 gallon tank of gas. Aprilia's really gone to town on the aerodynamics for the RSV4. New LED lights similar to the RS660 adorn the front of the bodywork, with revised downforce winglets either side of the fairing to help keep the front wheel down under acceleration and increase braking stability when it's time to heave on the Brembo Stylema calipers. A wider windshield and an increased area for your chin to sit on when in a full tuck has been developed and makes this iteration far more comfortable and less tiring to ride. To that end, the engineers have lowered the seat height by 9mm and the foot peg position by 10mm, while amazingly giving you an extra 1.5 degrees of ground clearance when cornering, not taking 1.5 degree away. The electronics now possess engine braking control, launch and wheelie control, cornering ABS, slide control, cruise control, and Aprilia has developed an all-new quick shifter for utterly seamless full power gear shifts. And if you go for the RSV4 Factory, you can throw in the Ohlins Smart EC2 semi-active suspension as well. The base model comes with Sachs fully adjustable units, and we first headed to Laguna Seca to see how both machines handled on track before grabbing a Factory for a quick spin up the SoCal hills.
Welcome to very cold, I'm really quite chilly, very cold Laguna Seca. It's been a bit of a sort of half and half day. It was wet all this morning, so we didn't get much track time until the afternoon, and then we banged in all the laps. But interesting to have a ride back to back on these two. Obviously you've got your base model RSV4 and you've got the RSV4 Factory. Thankfully Aprilia has got rid of the various designations, which is incredibly confusing. If you go back through Aprilia's history, there's a lot of like RFs, RRs, RSV4s, Factories, Rs, like so many different versions. Now got this one, base one, and you got your Factory. So happy days. It was really interesting to run this one with the Sachs suspension. I really enjoyed that one because realistically the biggest differences obviously between the two motorcycles is the suspension and the wheels. So you've got the Ohlins electronic suspension on that one, and you get forged aluminum wheels on that one as well. With this one you get your standard cast wheels. Now I was really impressed with this bike, and when you're talking $7,000 odd difference in MSRP, it makes for a pretty compelling argument, I gotta say, because you get electronics are the same, engine's the same, main chassis the same, obviously. On track, this was really impressive. What was great about this one was the fact that you don't have the electronics to kind of think for you in a way in the suspension. This is old school. This is a proper analog style, so everything becomes much more consistent over the course of a lap. When I jumped onto the RSV4 Factory, when we had it in its dynamic modes, there's 3 dynamic modes, and obviously then you get your manual modes as well. When we had them in the dynamic modes, it just didn't have that feel, that really nice, beautiful feel that you kind of come to expect really with these kinds of bikes. You knew it was doing it, you knew it was working, but it just didn't have that really connected feel. And this is racetrack stuff we're talking about. This isn't road riding. Once we had the electronic settings in manual, so it wasn't constantly changing its settings on the fly, it became much more predictable. And a bit more trustworthy as well, I think, is probably the best thing. And that's when you had the benefit of the wheels come through on this. So obviously you get lighter wheels, easy to change direction on, and you get all the other things like better acceleration, that kind of stuff. But there isn't, in my view, I don't feel there's an enormous amount of difference with this one. That's $7,000 less too. Like that's pretty substantial. Overall, obviously the ride experience on both of these bikes is just phenomenal. Like that motor, it's just beautiful. It's such a work of art, that motor. It has such character, such power, man. Like, it had been a while. It's been 4 or 5 months, I think, since I've ridden a Superbike on track, and I literally forgot how damn fast these things really are. This thing has so much power. Plus, the good thing is, like, Aprilia's managed to get these things through the emissions without it really, a bit like the Hayabusa in a way. I said in the Hayabusa thing, it kind of feels like they never had to go through emissions. It does have a little bit of a dip in the power, but overall, I mean, in comparison to the BMW and the Honda, like, this thing just sails through. You know, that thing picks up torque from 3,000 RPM and bang, it's gone, man. And you match to a really sweet little quick shifter. And also that beautiful chassis, you know, like the RSV4, if you've ever ridden an RSV4, that's the other thing too. It doesn't feel terribly different to any other RSV4, if I'm honest. Just a little bit crisper, a little bit sharper everywhere. But the RSV4, it's the 250 GP of Superbikes. You know, they have this beautiful chassis, which really talks to you, tells you where you're at, especially when you have it on manual suspension and stuff like that. You know exactly what the front end's doing, what the back's doing. It has such great braking stability. You have very good brakes, obviously, that come standard on this bike. So, you know, same brakes. Yeah, I just had to make sure of that. Same Brembo brakes. So the platforms are pretty similar across the board. It's a spectacular machine. Obviously, being the track day, we haven't really screwed around with things like cruise control and things like that. But obviously, those things are pretty stock standard these days as far as bikes go, especially high-end superbikes. The electronics within the RSV4 now have such adjustability. I think there's 7 different parameters that you can adjust, and bang, you get adjustable engine brake, which is a really big thing for the RSV4. I mean, it's long overdue for the RSV4, if I'm perfectly honest. Should have come out years ago. Now you've got it, so this thing is absolutely on par with the rest of the classes Superbikes. You know, it's right up there. The Aprilia Ride Performance Control, I'm pretty sure that's right, APRC systems, has always been one of the most intuitive designed systems out there. Plus you have the little paddle shifts on the left handlebar, which allow you to go up and down your traction control easier than, you know, any other system really on the market. It still quite amazes me that other people haven't employed that system. It's a little bit like when BMW were doing numbered suspension clickers on the S1000RR. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, they've done a very good job with the packaging of the electronics. Overall, it's an incredible machine. Both of these are incredible machines. I gotta say, like, at the end of the day, aside from the paint, I kind of like the stock one better. This one with the manual suspension, or the classic analog suspension, I just find it a bit more sort of connected to the analog is more connected, which sounds a little weird, I get, but it talks to me a little bit more. We're gonna get one of these. I'm not too sure which one Aprilia is gonna give us. I'm hoping they're gonna give us this one, the factory. I'm gonna go and do a road test on that, and so we'll be doing that stuff as well.
And that's basically what we've got. So that little thing right there, that is an Aprilia RSV4 Factory. So Aprilia's been nice enough to give us one of these things for a test ride, for a road test ride, but I'm more interested to see how the electronic suspension is going to perform on the road. So let's put the helmet on and let's go do it. This is absolutely some of my favorite riding anywhere in the world. I'm very lucky I get to go and do, well, actually I should say I was lucky before COVID started. Used to be going riding all over the world. However, Southern California riding doesn't get much better than the run across to Big Bear. It's a beautiful area in Southern California. So I'm rolling at the moment in automatic 3, which is the softest setting. well, you can just, even on the little acceleration there, I can feel the things bouncing around a little bit. Yeah, it even runs quite a bit there too. Yeah, it's definitely on the soft side. It's quite comfortable. Just cruising up here, I mean, I saved you guys the boring sort of chitty chatter through the traffic, which is not much fun for anyone. Yeah, once I got through all the crap traffic and whatnot, you know, it becomes, the RSV4 really begins to come alive. You see, there's a lot of caravans and motorhomes and stuff that are ripping along this road because it's such a great place for families. Gotta admit, it's probably too soft at the moment. Kind of feels a bit squishy in the back end on 3. What we'll do, I think you could change this on the fly. We'll give it a try. So I'll try and find a road where I know where I'm going. Okay, here we go. Okay, manual A2. Right, now we're on A2. That's the stiffer. Close the throttle. Let it do its thing. Alright, cool. Now we're in, I guess, the track suspension mode. Sort of like DOT tyre suspension. That's better. That's much better. It's funny too, because when electronic suspension's been out now for so long, but it's come along since that Ohlins Smart EC2 system came out on the Panigale all those years ago. Well, not even that, it was like 4 years ago, I think, on the first V4 Panigale. The suspension has come along so much. I remember when I rode the first HP4 BMW back in, I think it was 2012, and man, it was good, considering that for what it was, like, and how sort of rudimentary it was. But it's like a Game Boy comparison to an iPhone nowadays. Nowadays, on the road at least, the suspension and the electronic suspension is superb. I think that's where its main difference lies. It's great for track riding, but nice big bug there, splat. It's great for sort of intermediate level track riding, I guess, but it really shines on the road. Just being able to change, like if I was cruising around as I was back then, and that was the only suspension setting I had, which was the A3 level, like say that was all that was available to me, I wouldn't be that pleased with the way the RSV4 handles. But now that I can change it, really nice. It's very comfortable for a superbike, I gotta say. You know, me being at 6'1", I'm normally pretty adverse to riding superbikes in the street, but this is really quite nice. Lower set foot pegs, a few tar snakes there, it's not real nice. Lower set foot pegs, bars are a lot flatter, so it gives me a bit, sort of opens your chest a little bit more in the ride position, gives you that feeling almost like a little bit naked bike-ish in a way, although you are definitely sloped down more towards the front end. Help you load up that front tyre, get the thing turned. I gotta say, I absolutely love the throttle response on this thing. I'm in sport mode at the moment, so I ended up running through a bunch of different modes to get here, but yeah, I'm on sport mode, and yeah, it's beautiful. It has such a silky, like, initial crack of the throttle. As soon as you get that thing going, it just purrs its way in. But man, when it's like it's a bit of a tiger. Once the thing comes on, man, you better be ready. But just cruising at these road speeds, it's lovely. The suspension's beautiful, ride position's really nice. That glorious motor. It's a pretty special bike, this thing. And I've always loved the RSV4. I mean, I remember I was one of the first guys back in Australia, at least, one of the very first to ride the RSV4 when it first came out. OG bike back in 2009, I think, from memory. And I just remember thinking, man, this thing feels... It's that horrible cliche of bike journos, and they all say, oh, the thing feels like a 600. It really did feel like a 600. It was so nimble and so small, like front to back. It was so short, but it was also a little bit taller in comparison to what you had from something like Kawasaki or Honda. I mean, I'd just been riding the Kawasaki ZX10 for a year, which was a pig of a thing in comparison. The 2008 bike was an absolute brick of a bike in comparison to the RSV4. I mean, I really felt for guys like Chris Vermeulen and Tom Sachs when they were riding that tank of a bike against Biaggi, and although poor old Chris didn't get a very good shake at it after he ripped his knee apart at Phillip Island on the first ride. But yeah, it was not the easiest bike to get the most out of, that old thing. Certainly when you consider what Aprilia brought to the game back then, they really pushed the Superbike game far on at that point. And you got to think too that Ducati were pumping out the 1098, which, like, let's be honest, was pretty old school in comparison. I mean, yes, it was a very good bike, but it was the same. Jeez, that was strange. It was really... Open the throttle and nothing happened. That was weird. Yeah, that was the old school style, you know, testosterone engine. So when Aprilia bought the V4 out, it really changed the game. And you know, 2013 I think it was, they bought out the IMU, although they did a horrible job of marketing it because no one knew about it, myself included, even though it was my job. Yeah, we just had no idea. And then Yamaha made a big song and dance about it when they bought out the 2015 R1 with the fangled IMU from Bosch. So Aprilia probably learned a few marketing lessons off that. One thing I will say about the RSV4 is it's such a shame that it doesn't get raced. I mean, this is probably the best Superbike chassis you can buy. Certainly one of the best motors, and you can't race the thing anywhere. Look, it's their own fault. Unfortunately, by making it a better road bike, they've pretty much null and voided the thing in most classes, not all of them. You know, you can see there are certain championships around the world where you can run an unlimited bike. So that means you can run your Panigale V4, you can run your RSV4 1100. You know, some of these championships, the rules basically state whatever the biggest capacity bike, Superbike is, that a manufacturer makes, you can run. But when it comes to the world stuff, you know, World Superstock, World Superbike, you can't run them. I'm pretty sure you can run it in the Italian Championship. I think they allow for it, but I guess that's probably a little bit of nationality bias from the Italians in that regard. It would be great to see an RSV4 race in Moto America. No doubt there would need to be some parity rules and bits and pieces to make the thing legal, because I think a lot of the bikes nowadays, yes, you can make them up to 200 horsepower pretty easy, but I think this one's pretty close to 200 horsepower out of the box, even though it's 217 horsepower at the crank. So you're probably going to have a few contingencies in place to make it somewhat fair. But man, I would love to see these things race. It's such a lovely bike. Far out. Man, I love Big Bear. It's so pretty. I could live here one day. Yeah, I do love how smooth that throttle is. Like, look at this. Up it goes. Barely even feel that connection. Lovely. Love me some lane filtering. Man, I feel sorry for all the states in America where we can't lane filter. What a tall first gear. Takes a bit to get the girl off the line. It might be time for a coffee, I think. Get off this thing.
Alright, well I just popped in for a quick coffee here at We're at the Oaks restaurant here. It's basically on its way up to Big Bear, so if you're ever in California and want to go check out a place, get yourself a good coffee on the ride. This area is renowned for amazing riding, so yeah, really cool to take the RSV4 up this way from my place. Really enjoyed it. Now, when I had the chance to have a ride on two bikes at Laguna Seca, I've got to say I probably preferred to have the standard one with the manual suspension, but when I had to go, I mean, I must profess that I haven't had to go on the base model on the road, so I've only ridden the factory on the road. But man, I've got to say, now that I've had a real good go of it on the road, it's much more, I can see the value of it a lot more now. Being able to switch between the modes, and that's not something that's anything new, you know, like you've been able to do that for quite some time. But I've got to admit, I haven't had the chance to do it a lot myself, but being able to play a lot with the modes and being able to go in there and then still change all your individual parameters if you so choose, you know, obviously you've got so many different suspension settings anyway, it makes for a very compatible road bike. And, you know, just simple things like cruise control and all that sort of stuff, which is really nice. One of the big things I noticed on this model, more so from the track than on here, is just how much more stretched out it is. It's more, you know, you get a lot more room to move around. Your legs aren't anywhere near as cramped. I mean, I've been doing this thing in full leathers today, and I normally hate wearing leathers on the road. So doing that has been a bit more. It's been interesting to see how the geometry changes and, you know, the ergonomics changes have affected the bike. It's made for a much more pleasant road bike, and something that's, I mean, it's already one hell of a road bike anyway, so to be able to go out there and make these little changes, it's become a really special bike, the RSV4. I've got to say it's pretty close to the top of the tree, really, for me in Superbikes that I've tested so far this year. Obviously we've got a few to go. We still have to have a ride on the Kawasaki ZX10, depending where you are, so we're still going to have a go on that. But man, that RSV4 is pretty special. That V4 motor on the road, it's got such a docile, immediate power delivery. Like as soon as you get on the throttle, I actually stalled it a couple of times because it is so, you know, it feels, it's not maybe not quite as abrupt as what I'm used to, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It makes slow speed maneuvering, particularly through car parks and things like that, just like you just wind it on and just comes on so smooth in comparison to another couple of bikes that have maybe a bit more of a clunky throttle response. It takes a little bit for that torque to come through, but once it does, you're out of there. So yeah, pretty cool, man. And you know, that brilliant quick shifter as well. Aprilia worked hard to make sure their new quick shifter is, you know, the best it can be, and it's fantastic. It's so slick, especially on the road. Just bang, bang, bang. Lovely thing. Overall, I knew I was going to be impressed by it. Let's be honest, it's an RSV4 Factory. They were always impressive, but I was pretty blown away by how much I liked it on the road. So yeah, look, road bike, track bike, whatever bike it is that you're after, it's pretty hard to go past an RSV4 if you're looking at a superbike, and especially a premium superbike at that. If I were only doing the track, like track only, I would be going for the base model, because then I'd be putting in suspension, cartridge kit, shock, and I'd probably be changing the wheels anyway. If I'm doing what I've been doing now, which is predominantly road riding, yeah, I'm going the factory. Now that I've had a good go on the different modes in the suspension and all the other bits and pieces, I'm going for that. But yeah, spectacular motorcycles from Aprilia, man. Just can't say highly enough about them. Really cool bikes.